Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Movie Pope. And today we are on Trailer Wednesdays. We're going to be taking a look at The Mandalorian and Grogu. Now, for anybody of you who hasn't been living under a rock, Disney did a thing a while back called The Mandalorian with Pedro Pascal playing, well, The Mandalorian. And it was a pretty, I don't know, what would you say, Lee? Was it a pretty uneventful show? Did it add anything to the Star Wars lore? Did it kind of make you just wonder what was going on?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was enjoyable, right? Like, I don't want to, throw it totally under the bus, right? I think it was enjoyable. I think it kind of tapers off towards the end, right? But, I mean, I think that's also kind of, I think that was a little bit the point, was maybe to have something a little bit more grounded, even though we do see, Luke Skywalker shows up, right? So you see some of the characters that we're very familiar with. But yeah, it's a nice little, it's a father-son thing, right? That's what it is. It's a nice little father-son show.
I mean, the thing is that when season one came out, it was taking Star Wars in a new direction, right? Because up until that point, most of us, if we were to access Star Wars, it would normally be, via cinema, right?
Yes.
Now, unless you were a really, really big Star Wars fan, then you also watched the animated shows on at that time Disney, to kind of get your fix, but we weren't entirely sure if it was canon or if it was off just doing its own thing. So when season one of The Mandalorian came out, it was like, oh, okay, this is a pretty unique concept. I mean, you're taking elements that we're familiar with, but kind of introducing new characters into the universe, right? It wasn't leaning too heavily on, on the familiarity that we would see with other shows like Obi-Wan, for instance, where they leaned very heavily. They leaned very heavily on well-established characters and hoping that you would appreciate what was going on. Here with The Mandalorian, it was like, well, we're going to take Star Wars in a whole new direction. And what they did in season one, I thoroughly enjoyed, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you get to season two, that's when they start introducing people like Ahsoka, and then they start dropping hints of Luke Skywalker. And the huge stink for me came when they did the Book of Boba Fett, and then midway it just became another season of The Mandalorian.
Yep. Nope. I feel for that. I mean, because they've done good things. I think of Andor, right? I really enjoy that. And it's very similar to this, right? Where it's not really, it's in the Star Wars universe, but it doesn't really lean into the common tropes of classicing the Force, lightsabers, and all this other stuff.
Yeah, it's standing on its own 2 feet. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, whereas here, and this has been a common complaint that we've been griping for the past few seasons, they're really leaning into the member berries, right? And I gotta say, had they not done that, I think The Mandalorian would have been one of the best things Star Wars put out in quite a long time, right? Because even the sequel trilogy kind of made you wonder, what direction are they going at? Because as much as we may want to malign the prequel trilogy, we at least knew where it was leading up to, right?
Mm-hmm.
As much as you want to make fun of Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman and all these, and even Jar Jar Binks, I mean, we at least knew that the gradual payoff is it would lead to A New Hope and then the OG trilogy. Whereas the sequel trilogy, it's like, do we really want to know what happened to these characters? Like, we were pretty satisfied.
Palpatine. Are you trying to tell me you don't want to know more about Rey?
No. I also don't care that Chief Palpatine actually survived being tossed down that huge duck or whatever.
That's how you know you're devoid of that's how you know you're devoid of coming up with anything new. It's when you bring back Palpatine and be like, hey, you know what? Whatever. We'll bring in Palpatine, right? We don't know what we're doing for this last film.
So a few weeks ago, Dara, Art, and we did a review of The Devil Wears Prada, right? And we all agreed at that point there really is nowhere else you can take the movie. Like, the movie just ends where it ends. And then we did the trailer reaction to The Devil Wears Prada too, and we all just asked ourselves, how exactly are they building up to this? Like, where exactly is it going? Like, what else can they add to the story? And that's the same thing that we have here with The Mandalorian and Grogu. It's like, well, say what you want to say about the quote unquote ending of the show. I think the universal agreement is that we all feel the show kind of concludes where it concludes. So where else can you take these two, right? Because anywhere you take them, it's going to be a repetitive of what we've seen over the past 3 seasons, and obviously uh, the Book of Boba Fett. So it's not like they're doing anything interesting, right? Because so another thing too, Lee, like do they ever establish like the exact timeline of when the Mandalorian happens? Because I have a vague idea that it happens after the events of Return of the Jedi.
You know what? I don't know, and I don't even want to venture a guess because Star Wars canon is so all over the place. I don't recall, right? I'm sure
It's not an alternate universe. We know that for sure.
Yeah, that's
So,
very true. That's very true, right? So, yeah, I don't recall. That's a great question. I don't recall where this is supposed to all kind of line up with everything else that's out there.
because they drop hints that that the Empire has fallen, obviously, because in episode 1 we meet Werner Herzog, who plays a former Imperial official who kind of hires the Mandalorian to go do this thing, right? But we really never really know exactly what's going on here. So so it sounds like they're kind of like trying to shoehorn the story between what we see at the end of Return of the Jedi and what we will see later on at the beginning of, was it The Force Awakens was the first movie of the sequel
and you know what,
trilogy.
Luca? You're absolutely right. I just looked it up, right? So the Mandalorian takes place around year 9 to 11, and then like you start to get into I guess like Rey was born in 15. So yes, you're absolutely right. So this is taking place kind of like in between, like after Return of the Jedi, but before all the newer ones that just came out.
It's kind of doing the same thing that Star Trek is currently doing right now. They're trying to fill in all the gaps of all these different timelines that are kind of like spread out all over the place, because for whatever reason, they because I'm currently following a show called Strange New Worlds. Like, for whatever reason,
Ugh.
we just have to know who was commanding the Enterprise for Jim Kirk. And I mean, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Star Trek fan. I don't really give a shit about who commanded the ship before Jim Kirk, really. So it's kind of like the same issue that we're seeing with the Star Wars universe, where we have the trilogies that everybody knows and loves, right? And we appreciate the storylines that have been established, and then you have these shows coming in here trying to basically fill in the gaps. And as far as I know, with the people I've talked to, no one has ever asked the question, I wonder what happened between the time that the Empire fell and the First Order came into being. Like, that's never cropped up in conversation. But
Yeah, you have to like kind of just like, sometimes it's using your imagination, like the unknown, and having people try to fill in the gaps could be a ton of fun, right? You don't have to explain every single iota of everything that exists within a certain franchise, because then I feel like you take away the mystique or the allure of it. So you don't need to have all this stuff that exists, because to your point, right, nobody really cares.
yeah, and that's another thing too, because I mean, I mean, we've heard the news and we've seen the parodies over the past few years. Anything that Disney touches doesn't exactly turn to gold, really. I mean,
No.
Kathleen. I mean, South Park clearly lambasted Kathleen Kennedy, and quite masterfully too. I might add. So,
Yes.
so you kind of have to wonder, like, because there's only like a few shows that actually stand out that are of genuine interest. I mean, you mentioned Andor. Andor has actually tried to take Star Wars in a new genre, right? They're trying to do the whole espionage.
Yes.
I don't want to say James Bond, but kind of like espionage, counter espionage kind of thing. And I would even say like I said, the season 1 of the Mandalorian, it was kind of going for that sort of like lone bounty hunter, Ronin, lone samurai kind of thing, kind of harkening back to the original influences of George Lucas before things got out of hand.
Yep.
So,
and then you got stuff like Ahsoka, right? And you got like Ahsoka, then you have like the Acolyte that do the opposite, which is they have to constantly cram something into you to make you remember, like, oh, there's lightsabers. Hey, there's the Force.
Well, not even that. I know we normally don't venture into this territory, but you watch something like The Acolyte and Ahsoka, you kind of it's kind of the same vibe that we got when watching one battle after another. Let's put it that way. Like there was a certain kind of messaging kind of being pushed across, and it's one of those things where try as you might to ignore it, it just keeps hitting you episode after episode. And you're finally like, okay, fuck it. Like, all right, you're trying to tell me something. What exactly you're trying to say? Is it just possible for you to just tell a story and just have us enjoy it instead of getting on your soapbox and telling us what exactly is wrong with the modern world in this thinly veiled allegory that you've presented to us? But let's go ahead and take a look at The Mandalorian and Grogu, which comes out May 22nd.
Oh man, that's 2 months. Yeah, immediately an R2 unit, right? As we got to talking about this.
Never touch the buttons.
Oh, but like you have to appreciate Grogu, and I like how they use like little, like it's like a little animatronic, right? Like kind of like an old school thing.
Yeah, like what Frank Oz used to do.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a hut.
Close for the night. Thank you.
Gangsters. War criminals.
Long live the Empire.
We'll take out every bad guy in your deck of cards.
Oh, come on, you gotta love Grogu.
This isn't about revenge. It's about preventing another war.
Strap in.
You will suffer. And then it will be his turn.
You got like little samurai robots there.
Yep.
Before going into harm's way, check your armor.
I will say.
The kid will live centuries beyond me. I won't always be around to protect him.
Are you scared? You should be.
Do we run? Or do we fight?
I like this kid.
What are you waiting for?
That stroller like just like do that itself, like with that child like the stroller that seems like a dangerous design.
Let's save the rest for after dinner.
Oh man, it's every time you see Grogu, I just it's hard not to have a soft spot for a character like that, which I know is the point, right? Like, let's face it, everyone watches it for Grogu and the Mandalorian, right? And you know, I think that when I looked at this, something I always liked was that the Mandalorian, it kind of existed. It obviously existed in the world of Star Wars, but he was never really invested in everything that's going on, right? He was very much just, you know, like a bounty hunter, right? He was a gun for hire. He was there to do what it needed to, and he had his own moral code. And then I feel like in this, they're trying really hard to bring him into the big kind of like fight with the Empire type of thing, which I feel like is not needed, right? That was kind of, I think, the reason why we enjoyed The Mandalorian was because it was like, hey, cool. It allows us to be in the Star Wars universe for people that absolutely love the Star Wars universe, but we don't have to be inundated with all the other stuff that we constantly see. You know, I don't want to see any more stormtroopers, right? I'm tired of that, right? And it's like everything I saw in there was right after that, an R2 unit. Oh, now we're gonna have a bunch of huts show up. Oh, we're gonna be, you know, doing this other stuff with stormtroopers, right? Like, we don't need to see all that, right? The one thing that actually was cool to me was that like samurai robot looking thing that looked pretty awesome, right? Where's like that type of stuff that you could have just done a whole story about and just have it be that, but they just constantly have to throw everything else at you, and it's frustrating. So
yeah, it's kind of it's almost as if they want to remind you, hey, in case you didn't know, this was set in the Star Wars universe. You know,
yeah, like we literally have a Yoda species here. We have Yoda Junior here, right? Or Yoda Senior, whatever. Right?
Well,
So,
also keep in mind too, because the Mandalorians, they all wear pretty similar looking helmets. So I mean,
yeah.
if you see one Mandalorian helmet, you've seen them all, really.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's just it's not needed, and it's unfortunate that they do that. Now, I mean, it does look like, you know, the scenes where they're sharing their screen time together, right? It looks like it's fun. So I think they know what the audience is looking for, but, you know, it just makes me question why you feel the need to have to, like, bring this all together like this when it's not needed, right? You can stand alone. We've seen good shows like Andor that comes up that it can be absolutely just a well-written show with characters that just exist in this universe. I don't know why they're so afraid that they can't do that with everything else.
I mean, do you think it's because they feel like even after 3 seasons, they still haven't created a character that's compelling enough for us to want to root for? They kind of have to just keep piling on all these different snars, because we see like a lot of different scenes where, you know, Din Djarin is like fighting, I guess, you know, a young Hutt warrior, and then he's in a pit with the albino sea serpent, and then he's killing like, you know, as many stormtroopers and however many different uniforms there are, right? So it's like, I mean, how much shit could you put this guy through, really?
Yeah, Mando's been through a lot. He's been through a lot, man. That guy is tough as nails. So, well, at least the suit is, right?
Well, I will say I'm glad to see the Razorback back. That's the one thing I'm actually glad to see, because you know he loses that ship and he's flying that other, you know, smaller, pathetic fighter, which I felt like was unbecoming of a Mandalorian, right? So see the Razorback back in action, I thought that was pretty decent, but yeah, it comes out May 22nd. I know I'm not going to see it, but hey, you know, given that everything's integrated nowadays, give it a couple of weeks, it'll show up on Disney Plus, and then you know, we'll decide on whether it's worth taking a look at. But let us know down in the comments below what your thoughts are. Are you excited to see the Grogu and the Mandalorian one more time, or do you feel like maybe they could have squeezed another season out? Let us know down in the comments below. And as always, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.